Hi, I'm Nela Dunato, artist and designer, and it's time for another sketchbook tour. Now, I've had a couple of sketchbooks. I think there's 2 videos in my archive that's quite a similar style to this one. So this is a very small watercolor sketchbook that I mostly dedicated to urban sketching and landscapes, stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff here from my travels, and also sometimes when I'm just hanging out on the beach or, walking in nature and so on. So there's going to be a lot of that, and also some experiments, some random doodles, because it's a bit of a mess, but also some of my favorite sketches and some of my favorite memories are in this sketchbook. If you enjoyed my previous ones, I do think you'll find this one interesting as well. So come join me by my table and let's check out what's in the sketchbook. So this sketchbook is a Hahnemühle smallest available watercolor sketchbook. It also comes in portrait orientation, which is going to be my next one, because I think I'm kind of done with these landscape sketchbooks. I don't want to be buying any more of those for I don't know how long. I kind of got bored with that. And here in the beginning and also here at the very end, I usually paint swatches and kind of try to test color mixes whenever I buy new paint or use paint that I haven't used in a very long time. I test it out here because this is also watercolor paper, which is very useful. And if you want to see the sketching kit that I use for mostly for this travel sketchbook, I will link that video up so I don't have to talk about all the details of what I'm actually using. There's a couple of staples that I use. Now this one is just a doodle using watercolor and Inktense pencils. So just mixing 2 different colors and 2 different pencils to get this kind of blending effect. It's not very interesting, but I'd had nothing more interesting to do. These are basically sketches from the beach. A lot of those here. Whenever I'm sitting on a beach, kind of bored, then I'm going to find something interesting to sketch. So here I was testing the dry brushing technique. I also tried to do it here in the trees, but it didn't really work. But here in the sea, you got this interesting effect of water reflection. But I haven't kept using it later on. I just forgot it, I suppose. Now, this is also one of those beachside sketches, and I thought it was really interesting to have these 3 different vehicles in the same frame. Now, of course, it took me a long time to sketch this, so these didn't stay in place, but I kind of sketched them in the place where I saw them, where they were in this configuration, and then just kind of improvised from there. And this I painted based on my photo that I took of a butterfly, because butterflies move really fast, so it's not really viable to sketch them from life. This is a cactus plant that has beautiful flowers that bloom in the summer. We call it Queen of the Night here, but I don't know what the official name is. And this is the view from the balcony of my parents' apartment. So here I was going for an atmospheric effect. So the brightest colors right in the front, and then kind of cooler and paler colors in the background. I think it turned out rather well. Now, this sketchbook has traveled across the world with me, but I'm not really diligent with sketching. When I'm actually traveling, I find it very difficult to do that, especially if I'm sharing, company with people who are not artists. So it's really hard to find time to just sit and sketch because everyone has different plans. So this one I painted from a photo back in the apartment where we were staying. And this I also painted from a photo as I was on the plane back home. So those were essentially the only times when I was kind of sitting in a quiet place. And since there was nothing interesting around me, I used my photos. And here I was kind of focusing more on the colors, because this view of Valletta in Malta was very colorful. The beautiful colors of the sunset, and the city itself has this very sandy yellow rock that everything that's old was built from. So that was really interesting. And of course, the buildings are kind of painted different colors, but it's kind of pale now. And this little ferry that was just moving out of the bay. So it was a really interesting scene. But unfortunately, as the light changes fast this time of day, I wasn't able to actually sketch it on location. Yeah. So that was Malta. That was 2020. So I didn't say, but the first sketch in the sketchbook was from 2019, so June 2019. So I've used it for 4 summers, 3 summers. Oh my god, I forgot to count. So we're still in 2020. These are in my hometown, beachside, in the winter. So a villa next to the seaside, surrounded by some trees. And this is a view of the tree and some rocks. So basically, just something that I saw around me. This very quick sketch from the city where I grew up in, where my parents live. Just a view of the other island, and just some using colors trying to match the colors that I'm seeing. This was just a test of applying masking fluid with, I think it's called a liner pen. So it's an interesting kind of pen. I don't know if I have it here. It's here somewhere. Yeah, okay, so it looks like this. And this is a very old specimen from, I don't know how old, at least 50 years old, maybe older. And I found it that it's really great for applying masking fluid. It can give these really fine lines, and it doesn't damage it. You can just peel it off. So yeah, I didn't actually use this technique in this sketchbook, but I just used a small page because I didn't want to waste a bigger page of a different sketchbook for that. So you're going to see a lot of random stuff here just when I'm testing. I'm sorry if I'm scratching my nails. I'll try not to do that. This microphone picks up every sound. So this was testing out the technique with spraying. So I would paint kind of this loose poppy shape and then use a little spray bottle, something like this, to just spray into the wet paint, and then it dilutes in very interesting ways, gives a very kind of rugged edge, which you can't really achieve in any other way. And the paint kind of runs in these different puddles. So it's a very interesting effect. I did that also with a bigger painting, and it turned out really, really good. So this was just the first time that I actually tried this, and I really like it. And when I asked my partner what's his favorite sketch from this sketchbook, he said that this was his favorite. And I mean, I can't deny this is one of my favorites too. And it didn't take me a long time at all. Like something like this can take me maybe 10 to 15 minutes, because really the water does the job. I just, push paint here and there. But this was the similar thing. So here, this flower here was done in the same technique as this one. But I try to paint a background, which would be kind of contrasting colors, the yellow greens and the blue greens. But the edge here is just, it's not doing it for me. So I really like how this part looks. Really gives you that feeling of grass. But here, that dark edge is just not. So I don't know how to better paint that. I still haven't figured out a way how to make those edges a bit softer. So it looks, so here, it's a bit nicer here, but here, I don't know. Still in progress. And this was just a small study of a little sugar container with just 2 colors. And this is just an expressive portrait, again, using that spraying technique, just allowing water to flow the way it wants, and then just adding a bit of detail here and there. So just the shape of the eyes, the shape of the nose, so it kind of looks like a face, but the hair and this, it's interesting. I think it's a cool effect. Now this is a series which I did so on the beach, and it began. So I'll show you first the third one, because this is how they originally looked. Again, the spraying technique, trying to have a little soft effect of changing color, so blending colors from this yellow, green, gold to darker shades of yellow, and then just painting in the branches where I wanted to add the detail. So I wanted this rugged edge, this natural kind of branching out of the leaves with the spray. But okay, this one turned out fine, except the colors are super pale. So this could be better if I used maybe stronger colors or if I added more layers. But these two didn't really turn out the way I wanted, so I kind of tried to fix them with water-soluble pastels. So what you see, basically the stronger colors and the texture, that's from the Neocolor to pastels, the same thing here. So that's essentially just several attempts of getting some kind of effect. And it's the same tree, but it doesn't look the same. So the shape is a bit different in each sketch, which just goes to show that, you know, sometimes if other people don't know what you're sketching, they can tell you it's wrong, because what do you know what the tree actually looked like? This one is an experiment of drawing over a colored background, but didn't turn out quite right. So that's supposed to be a little shell with an empty shell that used to belong to some kind of a crab. This also on the beach, a study of how the color changes based on the depth of the water. So very deep, very far away, it's the ultramarine blue, the color we associate with the sea. But the closer you get, it's getting a bit more towards the greens, so kind of more like these turquoise color and the green gold color. And then here where there's a lot of algae, there you have this very a bit unpleasant maybe, but it's a natural color, like the brown color. And again, the rocks that are kind of overgrown with these brown algae. So that was what I was kind of going for, and I think it turned out quite all right. Here, this is a bit of decorative plants hanging over a rock wall. And I think I used a Pentel brush pen for this. And then I just added a bit of water to kind of soften the edges and add a little shadows here or there. But I found that I really like this Pentel pen for adding kind of gray details. And this, I try to, again, use the spraying effects to get these kind of bushy effects. And I added a bit of pastel for the flowers, but it didn't really turn out the way I wanted, but it's fine. Now this, a little doodle sketch of a plant, like a little bush on the rocks. And here I was trying out a technique that I learned from Shibasaki, who is an excellent painter and painting teacher here on YouTube. Check him out if you haven't seen his videos. So he's showing how to kind of cut out the white details with the edge of a brush. I believe I used a palette knife because none of my brushes have this very sharp edge at the back. But he usually uses either his fingernail or the back of his brush. Now some details this looks really nice. This is so. Here the grass is fine, but these branches didn't really turn out the way, no, these are fine. These are kind of messy. So just, again, trying out a technique that I haven't used later since then, but, you know, at least I know it exists. This is a study of a little insect. I don't know if it counts as a butterfly. So it's actually big, like maybe the fingernail of my thumb, so it's quite small. And I used an iridescent paint to because butterfly wings usually have this very kind of glittery iridescent color that you don't see. So naturally, when you see it from one angle, it looks completely black. But when you look at it from a different angle, then it looks really nice and shiny. And this is a plant hanging on the side of a wall. Again, brush pen for these rock details and watercolor, and brush pen for the flower. This was an experiment that didn't turn out the way I wanted at all. Some watercolors, some water-soluble pastels, some white gel pen. I tried to salvage it, but it just didn't work, so let's forget that this happened. This is a river, so we're still in 2020. Summer, August 2020. We were swimming in the river, and this is kind of the peaceful side of the river, and these are some rocks where it starts to flow a little faster. So I was using the wax pastel resist technique to get this kind of textured effect here, and I think it turned out quite all right. And I like the color of the water. It really is such a lovely blue-green color. And here I was trying to kind of paint the colors as intensely as possible. So normally, I would use a little more muted colors. I would use, typically a brown color here. But, with watercolor, colors always look a bit more faded. They look a bit more washed out when they dry, like here. They look very pastel-y and washed out. And here I was trying to get the colors as intense as possible and use a lot of bright red here in the red earth, and in a lot of dark greens here in the shadows. And I really like how it turned out. It's actually more natural. It's closer to what I was seeing in real life. This earth really is a bright red, like not red like a fire truck, but a very, very deep kind of rusty red. So I really like that, and that's something that I try to take into my other pieces. So if you know the painter Ian Fennelly, he uses a lot of bright colors in his work, and he was kind of an inspiration to me to try to incorporate brighter colors because then the sketch looks a lot more interesting, and ironically it looks more like real life than it would if I used more muted colors. Now this is my partner in a hammock, but I didn't really get the proportions right, so he looks really short here. This hammock was supposed to be more wider. But, when you're on such a small page, then things like that happen. Here, I was kind of going for a very atmospheric effect. Again, more detailed branches in the front, blended colors in the back, and very, very pastel-y, just a soft silhouette of an island in the back. So I really like how that turned out. Details, trees. If you noticed, I like painting trees. They're kind of a favorite subject matter for me. So a little bench with a tree, and I really like the texture of the grass here. So something that I don't usually put much detail into the grass, but I really like how this turned out. And here I was adding more texture with water-soluble pastels. So on the bark itself, there's little white lines, and on the tree itself. And I tried to do a bit more expressive details with a brush pen. So these leaves, they don't really look like actual leaves, but if you, squint a bit, they actually do. So just trying to paint or sketch more loosely, not paint every single detail. This is another one where I used spray a lot, and I really like how some of these, so I really like the bush and the rocks here. That turned out pretty good. The edge of this island here, I really like it. So it also gives you this spotty effect, like you put salt, but I didn't actually use salt, but I may have used salt water. I don't remember because it was a long time ago. And the little seagull. And I don't really like the details here. I try to add like buildings, towns here with pastels, but I don't like that part. But I do like these kind of flowy effects. These are tiny, tiny sketches of dogs. They're both deceased since that was 2020. So that's an Inktense pencil. So there's a bit of pencil marks and this bit of kind of diluted. And this is I think it's called a cormorant, a bird that can dive and that catches fish, and then sometimes they go on the rocks and dry themselves. And this one was actually sitting for a very long time. They tend to sit for like 10 to 15 minutes, so I was able to sketch it, but I didn't really get the shape right. And this is 2021, so there was nothing happening from September 2020 to March 2021. And this is a little chapel or church. I used a pen and water-soluble pastels. It says, after walking through the Gustav Woods or Gustav Forest, drinking coffee on the terrace, it's windy and it's not pleasant anymore after half an hour of sitting here. So I was kind of trying to memorize the moment and write a little note of what was happening as I was sitting there. And this is another one here from the seaside of my hometown. And here I used a water-soluble graphite and a brush pen. So the darkest areas are ink with a brush pen, and all the gray areas are water-soluble graphite. I didn't use water-soluble, I haven't used it in I don't know how many years, probably 15 years. I just have those leftovers from a long time ago. And then I thought, hey, I might use it again and see how it works. And it's okay. It looks a little bit like an old-timey photo. So I'm back after my camera overheated and shut down. So we left off on this picture, and I'm not sure when the camera cut off, so I'll just repeat that. What I like about this image is that it looks a bit like an old school photo. It's a bit warmer, like yellowish, and not the cool gray that I have in my watercolors or the brush pen. So it's interesting and a bit textured. But I don't think I'm going to use it quite as often. It doesn't look anything like the real life scene, but it is such a cute scene in the tiny fishing port in my hometown. And all these little shacks and barracks where fishermen keep their equipment, and all the little colorful houses and tiny and adorable, and that's kind of what I try to portray, because it looks really gorgeous in real life, but I don't think I'm doing it justice because it just looks kind of two-dimensional. But someone else, Ian Fennelly, would be able to paint a very, very beautiful scene there. This is a staircase next to the city pool in my hometown, and basically I was waiting for my partner with his training, so that's why I'm often that part of town, and I just wanted to try out the colors that I was seeing. And sometimes the light changes very fast around noon, so painting the shadows and stuff, as soon as you start painting it, by the time you're done, the shadow has already moved quite a bit, but I think it turned out fine. Now here, I'm having a little ray of sunshine coming through my curtains, and unfortunately can't do anything about that, but it doesn't affect the video, I think. And this is a little scene downtown with little benches that I was sketching as I was drinking some beer in the pub. And this is a scene I sketched while I was waiting for a bus on the bus station. So I really like this building. I didn't really sketch it symmetrically, so it's kind of wonky, but it was a really cool building. I don't know what it actually is. I have to go research that. And lots of little trees, trying to kind of use unusual colors, basically, instead of mixing the basic green color, just trying to overlap the lime green and the blue, and it turned out quite fine. This is a scene on the beach again, and comparing to that sketch that I showed you earlier where the colors are super bright, here the colors are a bit dull, but this is also different lighting, different time of day. And I didn't add any lines because I don't think it needs it. I think it looks better this way. I did add some Inktense pencil here to kind of make the shadows darker. It's just a bit of texture, but no pen. So I still can't really decide whether I want to use a pen to outline everything or not. So I'm not sure if you noticed, I forgot to say these ones use a gray ink. So it's actually waterproof gray ink. So I was doing that for a while to see if maybe I can make the lines kind of faded. It actually looks fine, but then I kind of went back to this very intense black contrasty thing because I like that too, and I just don't know. So I'm just kind of trying things out until I decide I like one thing better than the other. And this is, so 2022. This is all 2022. Chicago. I was there for about 9 days, and this is the only sketch that I did for reasons that I already explained. This was on the beach. I think it's called the Oak Street Beach. And I really love that beach. I actually did take a deep dip in the lake. And it was just basically focusing on the sunset colors and the buildings and not trying to be accurate because, gosh, there are so many buildings. And I don't like drawing modern buildings. They're basically just rectangles stacked on top of rectangles. Not my favorite thing to sketch. So I was just kind of indicating basic shapes and just trying to get this scenery. And I really like how much trees they have in Chicago. There's lots of trees and parks, lots of green stuff, even at the very center. So that was really nice. And so that's basically it. That's my memory. That's when I see this, I can still remember being on the Oak Street Beach. And I did use a brush that I actually bought there. So it was also kind of testing out something new. Because in every city that I travel to, I like to go to an art supply store. And this, I was in the Dick Blick store for the first time in my life. But it was out of a lot of stuff that I wanted to buy. So I only bought a couple of things. This is the river in a beautiful place in Croatia called Rastoke. So again, a beach scene, but on the river. It's very green because everything does look green. Like usually you would paint water blue, but this water didn't look blue. It looked green because there's lots of grasses, lots of seaweed, lots of algae. So it kind of looks like that. This is on the Lake Bled. It's a gorgeous place in Slovenia. So that's all this summer. Like I haven't traveled for a couple of years, and then bam, this summer I was trying to kind of compensate for all that. And this is an old castle. I forgot which century. Not really memorizing that sort of stuff. So I was sitting with a beautiful view on the lake and just sketching this castle. And this is why I don't really like this format, because you can't really fit an interesting scene unless it's a landscape scene. So, if it's something like a lake or seaside, sure. But if you're painting anything else, like focusing on one building, then you're kind of can't fit it in this format. So I'm going to be switching to portrait format, which would have been a lot better for something like this, because then I would have been able to fit this part also. But, just did my best with what I had. This Bohin, also next to a lake and a little river. Beautiful, beautiful place. It was rainy and misty that day, so what I tried to do here was get the kind of the effect of the misty forest here, and I think that turned out very nice. So very pleased with that. And you know, this little church and this little bridge I outlined with an Inktense pencil. So then I get both this kind of precision in contrast of the pencil, but I also can blend the color. So it's kind of softer. So for this particular drawing, I didn't want to use any ink like a brush pen or a fountain pen because that would have been too striking. But this one, I really like it with the pencil. I think it goes well with the kind of subject matter of, you know, stone bridge. So that we're right at the end. So this is back at my parents' hometown, a little crab, which I, of course, took a photo of. And based on the photo, because they also move fast, the little critters, using watercolor and some white gel pen for the white highlights. Again, some spraying to get a kind of bit more textured effect. And here I was trying to, you know, when the clouds part and then the rays of light kind of pour through, and this was a very warm light, kind of more towards the pink side because it was almost sunset, and I was trying to make that effect, but it's hard. It didn't really turn out what it looks like in the real life, but I tried. I used some white pastel for the resist technique. And this is the last one. This is actually from this morning. I was just having tea as I was waiting to do some errands downtown. And this is the most interesting scene that I saw, and not really something that I would normally sketch because, as I mentioned, I don't really like sketching buildings. Not my favorite thing. But that was what was available. So I try to match the kind of colors of the buildings, the very old, kind of dilapidated brick building, and the nicely painted warm pink, kind of more salmon-y color in front of it, and just trying to get the basic shadows and proportions right. And I didn't outline it with any kind of pen, but I did use a watercolor brush with a dark gray color to kind of just add the darkest shadows and outline some things that actually looked a bit outlined. So again, not sure it's the best decision because it looks kind of pale, so maybe it would get a better punch if I used a pen, but that's what I decided. I'm done with the sketchbook. I'm glad that I'm finally done because I said I was really getting tired of this format. So now I can switch to a different one. But I enjoyed using this one. I like that, you know, there's a lot of memories in here. There's a lot of travel going on here. So, and some experiments, you know, some things that are just for my personal exploration of techniques. So it's been fun. Thanks for watching the video till the end, and hope to see you again. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Bye.